What would you do if your sister kicked your 6-year-old daughter out into the cold night just because of an $1,800 dog? I used to think family was the safest place until that night. 2 kids lost in the darkness, wandering through a wealthy Colorado neighborhood in the freezing winter night. When I rushed to the police station, my heart nearly stopped beating, and I realized, how much can money change a person? I never thought I'd have to ask myself that question about the sister I once loved. But when it comes down to it, I had to choose to protect the child I love most. And that decision gave my sister and my whole family the most expensive lesson of their lives. Before I delve into the details of this story, I would like to thank you for taking the time to listen to my story today. Hello, everyone. I'm Garrett Collins, a 34-year-old industrial electrician in Denver, Colorado. The story I'm telling you today happened on a Friday night at the end of October last year, and trust me, it's the kind of thing you only want to happen to someone else. It's been 4 years since my wife died in a car accident on I-25. Since then, Lily and I have been living in a small apartment on Colfax Avenue like 2 best buddies. The apartment smells like burnt coffee and charred toast, but that's the smell of home. Lily is 6 years old, with blonde hair like her mom and an energetic personality, likely inherited from her mom, too. I don't remember clearly anymore. Sometimes, memories of Sarah are like broken glass. The more you try to pick up the pieces, the more it hurts. That Friday afternoon, I just picked up Lily from the after-school program at Colfax Elementary. My daughter was sitting on the carpet, building Lego pieces into a princess castle when the phone rang. Mike, my manager, his voice tight like a guitar string about to snap. Garrett, can you get to Aurora right now? The main generator's down, the entire production line is shut down. I glanced at Lily, concentrating on her building blocks, and felt like someone had just thrown a bowling ball into my stomach. Night shift meant I wouldn't be home until morning. And Lily, I couldn't leave her alone. My parents, John and Donna, were in Colorado Springs, en route to Denver for my sister Monica's party. An hour's drive away, so that they couldn't help me in time either. Then I thought of Monica. I dialed her number, and fortunately, she answered right away. I quickly asked, Monica, are you free? I have an emergency, need to work the night shift, need you to watch Lily. My sister's voice came through from the other end, cheerful but a bit rushed. Oh, sure. Bring her over to my place. I'm having a birthday party today, but Lily can play with Haley. Something about the way she said it made me feel like she was multitasking, but I was too relieved to have found a solution. I quickly packed an overnight bag for Lily, along with her teddy bear that she never sleeps without. Looking back now, I really wish I could go back and tell myself, don't go. That uneasy feeling isn't for no reason. But at the time, I just thought I was being overly worried. I had no idea that phone call would be the start of the longest night of my life. On the way to drop Lily off at my sister's, I remembered Monica from 3 years ago, a completely different person. Monica used to be an accountant at a small insurance company. The monthly salary was enough to get by. Nothing wealthy, but she was always cheerful like a canary. After Sarah died, Monica would often come to my apartment with containers of hot food and giggles, helping me watch Lily without ever complaining. Lily called my sister Aunt Moni, and the 2 of them were attached, as if she were Lily's second mother. She'd often ask to play at my sister's on weekends, and Monica always welcomed her with open arms. She even learned to imitate sweet voices to play doll characters for Lily, which was so funny that sometimes I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. But then 2 years ago, Monica divorced David. And that's when everything started changing faster than the weather in Colorado. David was a relatively well-off construction contractor, and in the divorce, Monica received a share of a substantial fortune, money that she could never have accumulated in a lifetime of accounting work. Gradually, Monica moved to Highlands Ranch, bought a shiny white BMW X5, and wore designer clothes where one shirt could cost my entire month's salary. She opened a high-end spa called Serenity Wellness. She began networking with new friends, all of whom were business people or the wives of company owners, the kind of people she had only seen in magazines. I noticed she called and visited less. Every time we met, she was always busy with her latest phone, talking about business deals or plans to expand the spa with a tone that suggested she was the CEO of a multinational corporation. But I told myself she was just busy building her new career. Everyone changes when they get opportunities, right? The last time I asked her to watch Lily was 4 months ago. Everything was still okay. Monica was still the Aunt Moni that Lily loved, at least on the surface. Thinking about it, I felt guilty again. Today, Monica was throwing an early birthday party because she'd be traveling on her actual birthday. A week ago, when she called to announce her small party with a few friends, I'd promised I'd come. However, when work suddenly came up, not only couldn't I attend, but I also had to ask her to babysit for the children. Still, thinking about how Mom and Dad would be at the party, I felt more at ease. At least Lily would have Grandma and Grandpa there, not just alone among strangers. From the back seat, Lily's small voice cut through my train of thought. Dad, does Aunt Moni still do funny voices for my dolls? I looked in the rearview mirror, saw my daughter's clear blue eyes waiting for an answer. I smiled and replied, "Of course, sweetheart." However, I was genuinely unsure of the actual answer. And maybe that's what I should have been worried about from the start. 15 minutes later, I pulled up in front of Monica's mansion, and right away, I knew something was very different. Expensive cars packed both sides of the street. Waitstaff in black and white uniforms bustled around, preparing for a mini Oscar ceremony. This didn't look like the small birthday party with a few friends Monica mentioned on the phone. Not even close. I counted quickly. At least 20 cars, all Mercedes, Lexus, and a few new Teslas. Monica's mansion was lit up like a Christmas tree, smooth jazz music drifting out from open windows. Monica appeared at the door before I could ring the bell. She was wearing a white silk dress that looked as if she'd just stepped out of a fashion magazine. Her hair elaborately curled, and a bright smile meant for someone behind me. A middle-aged couple was walking up the steps with a gift-wrapped bottle of wine. When her eyes turned to Lily and me, that smile dimmed a little. Just for a moment, but enough for me to notice. I looked around and asked her, "You sure it's convenient? I can see you're busy." Monica waved her hand, eyes still glancing at the approaching couple, and said, "It's fine. Just a 42nd birthday party. A few friends, some wine, no big deal. Just leave Lily here." The phone in my pocket buzzed for the third time as she finished speaking. Mike was probably so anxious that he wanted to jump through the screen and drag me away. I was still hesitating when Monica gently placed her hand on my shoulder, pushing me toward the door and whispering, "Go on. Take care of your business. I've got this." Lily stood next to me, her small hand gripping mine tightly. She looked at the crowded, unfamiliar house with wide eyes, a bit shy as she pressed against my leg. My heart ached. I knelt to my daughter's level and said gently, "I'll pick you up as early as possible." Lily looked at me, her voice small as a whisper. "You promise?" I kissed her forehead and answered, "I promise." Right then, a small figure ran out from inside the house. Haley, Monica's 11-year-old daughter, with brown hair in a neat ponytail. As soon as she saw Lily, she squealed and ran over to hug her cousin. "Lily, you're here. Come inside, I'll show you my room. I have a new doll." Watching the two kids hold hands and run into the house, their clear laughter ringing out among the music and adult conversations, I felt a little more at ease. Haley was always a kind child, and Lily loved her cousin as if she were a family member. At least my daughter had someone to keep her company. I stood up, nodded to Monica, and walked quickly toward the car. But just as my hand touched the door handle, a strange feeling made me turn around. But the phone buzzed for the 4th time. I sighed, opened the car door, and drove away. 25 minutes on the road to Aurora, I tried to focus on the work ahead of me. But the image of Lily's eyes when she asked, "You promise?" kept appearing in my head, haunting like a warning I'd ignored. I don't remember how many missed calls I've had in my life, but some missed calls will haunt you forever. 30 minutes earlier, I'd crawled down into the technical basement of the Aurora factory, where cell phone signals only exist in imagination. I was threading my hand through a tangle of wires like a crow's nest when I realized I'd forgotten my insulated pliers in the car. I cursed under my breath and climbed back to ground level. The smell of machine oil and metal still clung to my clothes when I opened the car door to get my tools. The phone lay on the passenger seat, screen flashing constantly. 3 calls from an unknown number. 2 calls from Mom. The moment I saw those numbers, my heart clenched. My hands were shaking so much that I had to press the call button twice to reach my mom. The ring hadn't finished once when Mom's voice came through, breathless like she just finished running. "Garrett, finally, you answered." I tried to suppress the panic rising and asked. "I was working in the basement, no signal. What happened, Mom?" And what Mom said next made my legs feel like they were nailed to the concrete floor. Mom told me that she and Dad were stuck in traffic on Interstate 25 because of an accident ahead, and they couldn't make it to the party on time. Then Haley called, crying hysterically, saying Monica had kicked Lily out of the house for losing her dog. I stammered back, my voice like someone who'd lost their soul. "What are you saying? Monica kicked Lily out onto the street?" Mom's voice choked up, a mix of anger boiling inside. She said, "We tried calling Monica but couldn't get through. Your dad called the police and I kept trying to reach you. When we finally got to Monica's house..." Mom paused for a beat. I could hear heavy breathing, as if she was trying to swallow something bitter. I asked again, my voice hoarse. "Then what?" Mom spat out each word, trying to hold back. "Your sister said Lily ran away on her own, then asked us to go look for her," acting indifferent, as if Lily were a stray cat that had gotten lost, not her own niece. Surrounded by all those guests, I had to bite my tongue and swallow my anger. I didn't hear anything after that sentence. My mind felt like someone had hit the off switch. I don't remember what I said to Mom before hanging up. I only know that 30 seconds later, I was sitting in the car calling Mike to explain the situation and hitting the gas to race out of the parking lot. The insulated pliers, the tangled wires, the night shift, the pay, everything disappeared from my head like it never existed. I tried calling back Haley's unknown number, but couldn't connect anymore. 25 minutes from Aurora back to Highlands Ranch. Every red light was a curse. Every slow car ahead was a test I was failing miserably. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. In my head, the image of Lily from that afternoon kept playing over and over like a broken film. Those clear blue eyes. The small hand is gripping Dad tightly. I promised to pick her up early. But right then, I didn't even know where my daughter was. I rushed into the Highlands Ranch police station after my mom called around 7:30 p.m., and I saw my daughter. Lily was sitting on a hard plastic chair, wrapped in a silver emergency blanket. At the end of October in Colorado, nighttime temperatures dropped to only about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and my daughter had been outside with just a thin shirt, eyes swollen and puffy, lips pale, her whole body shaking in waves like a leaf about to fall. My parents stood nearby. Mom's face was bright red, her lips pressed tight as if she were trying to contain a storm inside. And Dad was silent in a way that worried me more than yelling would have. His hands clenched, probably from anger. I ran over and dropped to my knees in front of Lily. And the moment my daughter saw me, Lily burst into tears, her little arms wrapping tightly around my neck and refusing to let go. The smell of wet grass, cold earth, a child's tears, all mixed, made my chest feel like someone had punched right through it. Lily sobbed and called out to me, her voice breaking. "Dad, Dad." I was so scared. I held her tight, one hand rubbing her back, the other quickly checking her over. Scraped knees, a few dirty marks on her cheeks, and fingernails with black dirt, but no serious injuries. I exhaled, feeling like someone had just lifted a 1,000-pound boulder off my chest. But just when I thought everything was over, the officer in charge walked over. He looked at me and said something that left me stunned for the second time that night. "Mr. Collins, we found 2 children, not 1. I looked up, still not understanding. The officer continued to explain that the patrol team had found Lily and another girl huddled under the pedestrian bridge near Redstone Park, almost a mile from Monica's house. When police arrived, the older child was holding the younger one tight, using her body to shield her from the wind. I turned around, and only then did I see Haley. My niece was sitting in a chair across the room, still wearing the pink princess dress she had worn earlier. But now that dress was muddy and dirty. Her white ballet flats had turned brown-gray, and her face was streaked with dried tears. 11 years old, sitting there like a baby bird beaten by rain, shoulders shaking with each sob. In that moment, everything hit me at once. Haley hadn't just sat there. She'd run out into the night alone to find her cousin. At the same time, her own mother was busy raising glasses with guests. Some moments make you want to cry and laugh at the same time. due to life's irony. An 11-year-old child did what a 42-year-old mother couldn't be bothered to do. As soon as she saw me looking over, Haley ran toward me. She stumbled over her dress and almost fell, then threw her arms around me and sobbed. "I'm sorry, Uncle," I called, "but you didn't answer. I couldn't leave Lily out there alone." Her voice choked off halfway, and I felt like someone was crushing my heart. This child was apologizing for saving her cousin and apologizing for doing the right thing all evening. I pulled both children into my arms. Holding them so tight my hands were shaking. My voice choked when I said to both of them, "Nobody did anything wrong. You're both safe now. I'm here." Lily was still hiccuping with little sobs. Haley was crying silently, tears soaking the shoulder of my shirt. I sat there, holding my two nieces, wondering how life had brought us to this moment. The officer waited a moment, then asked if I wanted to file a report. I nodded, but not right now. I sat down in the chair, one arm still holding Lily, the other grasping Haley's ice-cold hand. I looked into my niece's eyes, trying to keep my voice gentle. Tell me what happened tonight." Haley swallowed, her red-rimmed eyes shifting between me and Grandma and Grandpa. She opened her mouth, then hesitated, like she didn't know where to start. Lily started telling the story first, her voice still choking on each word. My mom sat down next to Haley, took off the shawl from her shoulders, and wrapped it around my niece. She hugged her, one hand rubbing her back in a steady rhythm. My dad stood up and quietly walked outside. I knew he was going to smoke. Dad only smoked when he couldn't control his emotions. Lily said that after I left, Aunt Monica took her to a room at the back of the house. She gave her a small dog and instructed, "Keep Bella here for me. Okay? She has an upset stomach. If she runs around, she'll make a mess everywhere. Watch her for me, don't let her go outside." Bella was a pure white Pomeranian, a tiny toy dog weighing only about 4 pounds. Monica bought it from a breeding facility in Boulder for $1,800. The dog had been having digestive issues for a few days, but my sister still wouldn't cancel the party. Instead, she asked a 6-year-old child to watch it. My daughter looked up and asked her aunt hopefully, "Aunt Monica, can I have some birthday cake?" Monica just answered curtly later and turned away, the click of her heels fading into the distance. Lily sat there alone in the empty room, holding the strange dog in her lap, listening to music and laughter drifting in from the living room, the sound of champagne glasses clinking, the sound of adults chatting excitedly, and my daughter waited for the cake that never came. A short while later, Monica came back and pulled Lily outside to stand next to Haley, where they greeted the guests. Lily said she saw her cousin in a beautiful dress, getting compliments from everyone, while she stood there like a shadow. Then, her aunt told her to go back to the room to continue watching Bella. About half an hour later, Lily needed to use the bathroom. She put Bella down on the floor, cracked the door open, planning to run outside quickly. But the dog was faster. It shot past her legs, bolted out the back door, and disappeared into the darkness. Lily's voice shook as she told me. I chased after it but couldn't catch up. "Dad, I was so scared." At this point, Haley picked up the story. She said her mom discovered Bella was missing when a guest asked about the cute little dog. Monica ran to the backyard, saw the room door wide open, and her face immediately changed color. Haley looked down at the ground, her voice getting smaller. My mom turned to Lily and yelled, "What did you do to let it run away?" Lily cried and apologized, but Monica wouldn't listen. Haley continued. "My mom said, 'That dog cost me $1,800. You lost it, you find it. Don't come back inside until you find it.'" Then Monica pushed Lily out the back door and slammed it shut. Haley ran over and grabbed her mother's hand, begging her not to kick her cousin out because it was dark outside. But her mom yelled in her face, "This is none of your business." Haley paused, eyes looking distant, whispering, "I'd never seen my mom like that before. Never." After that, Haley ran to her room to call me. No answer. Called Grandma and Grandpa. Grandma told her to stay inside and wait. But Haley looked out the window, saw how dark it was outside, and she couldn't just sit there. Lily continued with the rest. She walked and walked, calling Bella's name, but couldn't find her. When she tried to go back, she couldn't recognize the way home because all the houses looked the same. She sat down on the sidewalk, crying and calling for her dad. Haley nodded and said, I ran everywhere yelling Lily's name, but the neighborhood was pitch black, and I got lost too. Then I heard crying, ran toward that sound, and found Lily huddled under the bridge. I hugged her, and we both sat there waiting. I sat there listening to everything and felt like someone was slowly sucking all the air out of my lungs. My dad walked in from outside, the smell of cigarettes trailing behind him. He looked at the two children, jaw clenched so tight his cheek muscles were twitching. My mom was still holding Haley, but she wasn't crying. Her eyes were bone dry, and I knew that was more dangerous than tears. After the police recorded the statements in their file, I drove to Monica's house. Lily and Haley sat in the back, still holding each other's hands tightly. My parents followed behind in their own car. When we arrived, the scene was completely different from the glamorous party that had taken place earlier. A police car was parked in front of it. A few remaining guests stood clustered on the sidewalk, whispering and glancing toward the mansion like they were watching a free show. Monica sat on the front steps, shoulders shaking in waves. Mascara smeared all over her face, eyes red and swollen. She was crying, but looking at the way she kept glancing toward the group of guests, I wasn't sure if she was crying from worry about the kids, or because her $1,000 party had just exploded in front of all her business partners. The moment she saw Haley get out of the car, Monica sprang up like a jack-in-the-box. She rushed over, grabbed her daughter's shoulders and screamed, "Who said you could leave the house? Do you know how worried I was?" I stood there, Lily in my arms, and it took me a few seconds to believe I wasn't hallucinating. Sometimes life throws situations so ironic in your face that you don't know whether to laugh or cry. My dad stepped forward, his voice dropping low in a way that let me know he was holding back something huge. "Monica, let go of the child. Right now." Monica whipped around, tears still flowing, choking out. "You don't understand, Dad. I was worried about Haley for a whole hour." My mom cut her off, her voice so calm it sent chills down my spine. "You were worried about Haley? Then who was worried about Lily when you pushed her out onto the street?" Monica stammered, her eyes darting around. That was different." I stepped forward, put Lily down, and looked straight into my sister's eyes, my voice hard. "Different how? Haley goes outside on her own, and you scream like you're being pinched. 6-year-old Lily gets kicked out into the night, and that's different?" Monica opened her mouth to explain something, but I didn't give her a chance to say another word. I turned to look at the remaining guests watching, my voice ringing out clearly. "You want to know what happened tonight? This woman kicked her 6-year-old niece out into the dark street for losing her $1,800 dog. $1,800. That's what she valued, a child's safety." A few guests shook their heads in disgust, then quietly walked toward their cars. Nobody wanted to get involved in this mess. At this point, Monica screamed, her voice shrill. "You don't understand anything. This was an important party. So many business partners. The kids were wandering around somewhere for a little bit. Wandering around somewhere. 2 children holding each other under a bridge in the freezing night, and she called that wandering around somewhere." My mom didn't say anything. She picked up a glass of red wine from the table and walked toward Monica. My sister stepped back, eyes watching Mom cautiously. "Mom, what are you doing?" Mom stopped in front of her daughter, her voice strangely gentle. She said, "Was this party more important than the children?" "Monica?" Monica stammered, eyes still glued to the wine glass in Mom's hand. "No, not more important, but..." She couldn't finish the sentence before Mom threw the entire glass of wine in her face. Red wine streamed down Monica's face, down her neck, soaking into her expensive dress. The heavy smell of fermented grapes filled the air. The yard fell dead silent. The few remaining guests stood there with their mouths hanging open, the wine glasses in their hands suddenly feeling awkward. My mom looked at her daughter, threw the glass down where it shattered on the ground, her voice calm. "Well then, the party's not important anymore. But what you did to your niece tonight, I will never forget." She paused a beat, then continued, each word clear. "I raised you better than this. I don't recognize who you are anymore." Monica stood frozen, wine dripping from her chin, but she didn't bother wiping it. This was the first time in her life her own mother had done something like this in front of so many people. But what hurt her most was when Haley slowly walked up in front of her mother. The girl looked at Monica, her eyes still red but her voice strangely steady. "Mom, was $1,800 more important than Lily?" Monica didn't answer. Haley continued, her voice smaller but each word heavy as stone. "More important than me?" Monica was silent. Haley swallowed and said her final words. "Do you remember who you used to be? Because I do. I miss who you used to be so much." Monica stood in her own yard, and she had nothing left to say. I picked up Lily, took Haley's hand, and walked out of that mansion. I didn't look back. 2 weeks after that night, I got a notification from Colorado Child Protective Services. Monica was being investigated for child abandonment. But the legal paperwork wasn't what kept me awake every night. It was Lily. For the first 2 weeks, I had to take time off work to stay home and watch her. Lily wouldn't sleep alone anymore. Every time it got dark, my daughter would start shaking, clinging to my hand, and refusing to let go. Every night, around 2 or 3 in the morning, I'd be woken up by quiet sobbing. Lily would be curled up in bed, forehead drenched in sweat, mouth mumbling Bella's name, calling for Dad, even calling for Aunt Moni. The psychologist said Lily was experiencing trauma. Fear of darkness, fear of abandonment, fear of doing something wrong, and being kicked out. Things a 6-year-old should never have to know about. Haley wasn't any better. She was placed in temporary custody with my parents. My mom told me that during the first weeks, Haley barely talked to anyone, just sat for hours by the window looking outside. 11 years old, and Haley had already learned how to hide pain like an adult. Meanwhile, Monica's life collapsed faster than rumors spread on social media. One guest at the party had posted the story on their personal page. Spa customers canceled appointments in droves. Partners backed out. Those new friends suddenly weren't answering their phones anymore. 3 months after opening, Serenity Wellness closed permanently. Monica lost almost everything. Her daughter, her career, her reputation. It turns out that friendships built on money are as fragile as the money itself. Monica called me many times. I didn't answer. She sent texts. I didn't read them. I wasn't ready. 2 months later, my mom called to tell me Haley had asked to visit her mother. She said, "Grandma, someone has to remind Mom who she used to be. If no one else will do it, I will." Mom said at their first meeting, Haley just sat next to Monica and held her hand. The two of them sat like that for an hour, silent. Then Monica broke down crying and said through her sobs, "I'm sorry, honey. I don't know what happened to me anymore." Haley looked at her mom. Her voice gentle, "You just got lost. But people who are lost can find their way back. You used to tell me that." After that, Monica started seeing a therapist. She wrote me a 4-page letter. Not asking for forgiveness, not making excuses, and just taking responsibility. I read that letter 3 times. The first time, I wanted to tear it up. The second time, I folded it and shoved it in a drawer. The third time, I just sat staring at her shaky handwriting. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw the letter away either. And today, more than a year has passed since that fateful night. Our lives have undergone significant changes in ways I never could have imagined. Haley is now back living with her mom, but they're not in that mansion in Highlands Ranch anymore. After everything happened, my sister sold that house and moved to a small apartment in Aurora, where she's rebuilding her relationship with her daughter and finding herself again. Maybe, after losing so much, both money and love, she finally realized that the most valuable things in life can never be bought with cash. Lily and I still live in the old apartment. Letters from my sister still arrive regularly every month, but I still haven't responded once. Maybe the wound in my heart still hasn't fully healed. Perhaps I'm still not ready. My parents still alternate between our 2 apartments. They never tell us to forgive or try to reconcile. Maybe because they understand that hurt needs time to heal, and no one can force a hurting heart to open before it's ready. Lily is almost 8 now, better behaved, and has fewer nightmares than before. She no longer mentions Aunt Moni. I thought she'd forgotten, and I didn't dare to bring it up either. But yesterday, a gift was delivered through a visit from Haley and my parents. It was a cute little brown teddy bear. Haley gave the bear to Lily and said gently, "My mom asked me to bring this to you. Press its belly, Lily." My daughter curiously pressed it, and Monica's voice came out, shaky and choked up, Hello, Princess Lily. This is Aunt Moni. I know I did something terrible to you, and I don't deserve your forgiveness. I want you to know that I miss you. I miss those afternoons when we played dolls together. I miss your laughter. I miss the way you called me Aunt Moni in your sweet voice. I got lost, and I hurt you because of it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The voice in the recording paused for a beat, then continued. Next week is your 8th birthday. I don't dare ask to come, but if you want to see me, I'll be here. I'll always be here. Whatever you decide, I still love you. Forever. The recording ended. The room fell silent. Lily looked up at me, and the moment I saw those eyes, I rushed to hold her in my arms. I was scared, really scared. Scared she would cry, frightened she would hurt, scared the horrible memories from that night would come flooding back. But Lily didn't cry. She lifted her head, looked at me, and asked in a small voice, Dad, Aunt Moni still hasn't given Teddy back to me. I want to introduce Teddy to Chubby Bear. I burst out laughing through the tears that were about to spill. Teddy was the bear Lily had left at Aunt's house that day, something I thought she'd forgotten long ago. Turns out, in a 7-year-old's mind, the biggest concern wasn't pain or forgiveness, but that two stuffed animals needed to meet each other. Haley stood beside us, took her cousin's hand, and giggled along with her. My parents stood behind us, first holding their breath nervously, now laughing through tears. Mom shook her head, mumbling, "This little rascal." In that moment, I realized something. Maybe the person teaching me about forgiveness wasn't anyone else, but the child sitting in my arms. And I realized that children are sometimes so simple that they make us adults feel ashamed. People often say that hurt people hurt people. That's true. My sister became obsessed with money and status, and it led to her breaking up with my daughter. However, there's something people rarely mention. Healed individuals can also help others heal. And sometimes, the people who do that are children. If my story can leave any lessons, I hope it's these 3 things. First, money is just a tool, not a measure of human worth. Don't let it change who you are or how you treat the people who love you. Second, when you see children being mistreated, speak up. And third, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it definitely doesn't mean accepting wrongdoing. Forgiveness is about releasing the burden in your heart, allowing you to move forward. It's a gift you give yourself, not the other person. If you were me, would you give Monica a second chance? Or would you cut ties completely? There's no right or wrong answer. You can answer your own question. If the story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to support me in continuing to share stories like this. Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear your opinions. Thank you for listening. See you next time. If you came home and found your 5-year-old daughter sitting curled up in a tub full of muddy water, her face still smeared with makeup like a sad clown, eyes empty, what would you do to whoever caused that? I made a decision, and that decision made the person who caused my daughter's pain pay a very steep price. But that's not all, because I also had to face the consequences of all the years I'd missed, all the moments I was absent. And even now, I still don't know if I was right or wrong. Before getting into the details of the story, I want to thank you for choosing to listen to me today. This isn't an easy story to tell, but I believe it needs to be said. Hello everyone, I'm Garrett Reynolds, 32 years old. The story I'm telling today happened on a Saturday afternoon in the fall, about 2 years ago, when my life was at the bottom of a well, and someone was still throwing rocks down. I used to be a software engineer with a 6-figure salary at a San Francisco startup. We had a really catchy slogan, "We're gonna change the world." Turns out that wasn't a business strategy, and the company went bankrupt after 18 months. I lost my job the same week my wife, Rachel, filed for divorce. She said she needed to find herself. I didn't realize her true self was in my coworker's apartment. When I found out, I lost control. I drove straight to his apartment and taught him a lesson right at his front door. The police came, handcuffed me, and I almost got locked up for assault. But right there, sitting in the patrol car, I thought about Rosie, my 5-year-old daughter. She was the only reason I had any sanity left. In the end, he didn't press charges because he knew he was in the wrong, and I was released with a warning. Rosie is all I have left. She has curly chestnut hair like her mom, but the smile is mine, or at least like mine when I still knew how to smile. Every morning when I wake up and see her sleeping curled up with her old, worn teddy bear, I tell myself I can't give up. Not for myself, but because she needs a father. But San Francisco wasn't kind to Rosie. She's had asthma since she was little, and the city air made it worse every day. There were nights I had to carry her to the emergency room because she was wheezing so bad she couldn't breathe, her lips turning blue. The doctor said I needed to take her somewhere with cleaner air and less pollution. I nodded without knowing where that would be. Then my dad died. Stage 4 lung cancer. He went fast, as if he were rushing to another appointment and didn't have time to say goodbye. I flew back to Sacramento to handle the funeral, bringing Rosie with me, and something amazing happened. After just 2 weeks at the house on Bruceville Road, she no longer had asthma attacks. The suburban air, the big yard with trees, no car exhaust, and fine dust like San Francisco. She slept better and ran around without getting out of breath. For the first time in 2 years, I saw my daughter get to be a normal kid. That's why I decided to stay. Not just for Rosie, but because this was also my home. I grew up here, knew every corner of the yard, every crack in the wall. My dad built the wooden fence in the back when I was 10, and I still remember the smell of fresh-cut pine that day. The house held my memories, even though that year it belonged to someone else. My dad didn't leave a will. By law, the house went to his wife, my stepmother, Diane Patterson. Life's fair. A man works his whole life to build a home, and when he's gone, his own son becomes a boarder in the house his father once lived in. I wasn't staying for free. Every month, I paid Diane $800 for living expenses, including utilities and groceries. I still worked remotely, taking freelance programming projects. My income was down almost half from before, but enough to get by. The apartment in San Francisco was being sold as part of the divorce settlement with Rachel, and I was waiting for that money to find my own place for my daughter and me. And luckily, Diane wasn't a bad person. She treated me politely, not coldly but not warmly either. But my stepsister Brooke was a different story. She was 24, had never worked a day in her life, and spent money as if tomorrow were the apocalypse. Every time she walked by, expensive perfume wafted through the room, that sickeningly sweet smell that I'll never forget. After 3 months living in that house, things weren't bad, but they weren't comfortable either. I tried to make myself useful by fixing broken things around the house in my spare time. Rotting fence, leaky pipes, creaky doors. Partly because I wanted to keep Dad's house in good shape, and partly because I didn't want to feel like a freeloader. That fateful Saturday afternoon, I drove to Home Depot on Florin Road to buy some wood to replace the termite-damaged section of fence. I left Rosie at home with Diane and Brooke. I thought she'd be safe. The trip only took about 40 minutes, including time to pick out materials and wait in the checkout line. But when I came back and parked in front of the yard, the house was strangely quiet. No TV sounds, no Rosie laughing, no Brooke talking loudly on the phone like usual. The kind of silence that makes your hair stand on end. I realized something was wrong. Then I heard it. Weak crying from the backyard. Not the crying of a kid wanting candy or throwing a tantrum about not watching cartoons. It was the crying of something broken, exhausted crying I'd never heard from my daughter. I ran back there, and what I saw even now still appears every time I close my eyes. Rosie, the daughter I treasured like the last precious thing in my life, was sitting curled up in the steel tub that Diane used for growing tomatoes in the summer. The afternoon sun was fading behind the oak trees to the west, casting long shadows across the yard. The cold October wind blew through, rustling the dry leaves still clinging to the branches. And in the middle of that deceptively peaceful scene, my daughter sat in the metal container nearly 3 feet high and about a yard wide, covered in mud. But it wasn't the mud that made my heart feel like someone was squeezing it. On her face, red lipstick and blue eyeshadow were smeared messily like someone wanted to turn her into a clown. Lipstick smeared all the way to her cheeks, eyeshadow running down her chin from tears, like a sad clown, the saddest clown I'd ever seen in my life. The pink princess dress that Rosie loved most was stained with the dark brown of wet soil. Dead leaves floated in the puddle of stagnant water at the bottom of the tub, giving off the musty smell of earth that hadn't seen sunlight in ages. Her tiny hands gripped the edge of the container, fingernails black from clawing at the metal, like she tried to climb out but couldn't. Rosie wasn't crying loudly anymore, just weak whimpering, exhausted. But what made my knees want to buckle wasn't the crying. It was her eyes, empty, like the lights had gone out. Eyes that I used to see sparkle like stars when she opened birthday presents. Eyes that crinkled with laughter every time I came home, now just two bottomless black holes. I don't remember how I ended up in the tub. I know the cold mud soaked through my shoes, through my jeans, but I didn't care. I picked her up, held her tight against my chest. Rosie shook in my arms, but didn't hug back. I shook her, my voice hoarse with panic, calling her name. Rosie, Rosie, look at me. She blinked, slowly, gradually, like someone just woken from a nightmare, but still couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't. Then Rosie spoke, her voice hoarse and shaky. Dad, Rosie is a bad girl. I'm sorry. Each word stabbed through my chest more painfully than anything I'd ever endured. I asked back, trying to contain the anger starting to boil up. Who told you you're a bad girl? Who said that to you? She pointed toward the house, her finger trembling, whispering, Aunt Brooke. Rosie accidentally touched her stuff. She grabbed me. I got so scared I bit her. I'm terrible, Dad. Right then, I looked down at my daughter's arm. On the soft white skin of a 5-year-old, a purple bruise clearly showed finger marks. She had grabbed her and grabbed her hard. Hard enough that a 5-year-old had to use her teeth to defend herself. The blood in my body boiled. I carried my daughter into the house, leaving heavy footsteps that left muddy tracks on the wooden floor, a floor Diane was always proud to keep spotless. And the first person I saw when I walked through the back door was sitting on the sofa scrolling through her phone, feet up on the coffee table, as if nothing had happened in this world. The moment I saw Brooke sitting there, memories of the day she was born flooded back instantly. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. I was only 8 years old when Dad took me to Mercy General Hospital to see my newborn sister. Through the nursery window, I saw a tiny little being sleeping, face all red, hands clenched tight, like she was holding on to something invisible. Dad put his hand on my shoulder, his voice choked up. Now you have a little sister. You're the big brother, you have to protect her. Okay? I nodded, my eyes stinging, promising myself I'd be the best big brother in the world. For all the years after that, I kept that promise. I gave Brooke everything. The last piece of cake, the best seat in front of the TV, and Dad's attention. I used to think that if anyone dared hurt my sister, I'd never forgive them. But as the years went by, Dad and Diane's spoiling had turned that sweet little girl into something completely different. Brooke grew up believing the whole world had to revolve around her, that everything she wanted should be given to her, that she was never wrong. And maybe I helped create this monster with my unconditional giving in. That day, I stood in the living room, holding my daughter, covered in mud and tears, looking at Brooke, sitting there, waiting as if on her own throne. She looked up at me, her eyes scanning over like looking at a fly that had wandered into the house. Then her eyes moved to Rosie, down to the floor, and she frowned in annoyance. Brooke said coldly, "There's mud all over the floor now." Not one word of concern, not a bit of worry. A 5-year-old niece had just been locked outside for who knows how long, and the only thing she cared about was the floor. I took a deep breath, set Rosie down in the corner of the sofa, and wrapped a wool blanket around her. Rosie was still shaking, eyes looking down, not daring to look up. My hands were shaking too, but not from the cold. I asked, my voice dropping so low I didn't recognize it myself. "What did you do to my daughter?" Brooke immediately held up her arm, showing bite marks that had already bruised, her voice shrill like she was the real victim. "Look at this. She bit me like a wild animal." Then she pointed to the pile of broken cosmetics on the vanity table in the corner. her tone like she'd lost her entire fortune. Over $500. Serum, lipstick, limited edition eyeshadow. Everything. She snuck into my room, messed with my stuff without permission, then broke it all. How are you going to pay me back? She wasn't done, continuing with a venomous voice. She doesn't have a mother to teach her. That's why she's so badly behaved. I was teaching her a lesson. Hearing this, I gritted my teeth and asked back, each word coming out cold as steel. How hard did you grab my daughter that she had to bite to defend herself? Brooke shrugged, casual like she was talking about the weather. She broke my stuff, I punished her. Makes sense. I growled and shouted, how long did you lock a 5-year-old in that cold mud tub? An hour? Or longer? Brooke rolled her eyes, her voice bored as she replied, oh my God, you're overreacting. I just had her sit there and think about her mistakes. I used to get punished way worse than that. I replied, unable to hold back the sarcasm. And look how you turned out. That comment lit the fuse for a war. Brooke shot up, eyes blazing, voice hissing through her teeth. Who are you to talk to me like that? Bankrupt loser, abandoned by your wife. Came crawling back to my mom's house begging for a place to stay. She stepped closer, hands on her hips, each word like a knife. You and that wild child don't belong here. My mom was just being nice, letting you crash here. Without her, you two would be on the streets. Then she screamed, her voice like a needle piercing eardrums. This is my house. You're just an uninvited guest. I stood there, fists clenched so tight my knuckles went white. But what almost made me collapse wasn't Brooke's insults. It was the whisper from the corner of the sofa. Rosie was curled up small, clutching a pillow, eyes looking down, lips moving silently. Her voice was so weak I had to hold my breath to hear. I'm sorry. I'll leave. I don't want to be here anymore. A 5-year-old. Just hurt. And she thought it was all her fault. Just as I was about to charge over and teach her a lesson, a car pulled up outside. The front door opened. Diane walked in with Costco bags, face still bright from finding some good deals today. And Brooke instantly transformed. Tears streaming, she ran to her mother, voice choking, Mom, look at this. She bit me. And Garrett yelled at me. I stood there watching that perfect performance and could only think one thing. That's it. Brooke was her biological daughter anyway. Blood is thicker than water. I'd already lost. The moment Brooke finished speaking, I saw Diane's face change color, but there was something in her eyes that made me unsure what she was thinking. Diane stood there, Costco bags still in her hands, silently observing. Her eyes swept around the room, from me breathing heavily, to Brooke crying and telling on me, to the pile of broken cosmetics on the table. Then she saw Rosie. Diane set the bags down on the floor, slowly. Each movement is deliberate, not saying a word. She walked over to her granddaughter, knelt and reached out to touch her forehead. I saw her pause when she realized Rosie's forehead was ice cold, even though we were inside with the heating. Then her eyes stopped at Rosie's arm, where the purple bruise marks were clearly visible. Brooke was still sniffling beside her, tugging at her mom's hand and whining. Do you see? She's so bad. I was teaching her a lesson, and Garrett is acting as if I hurt her. Diane pulled her daughter's hand away, her voice calm to a scary degree. Brooke, what did you do to Rosie? Brooke stammered. I just had her sit outside and think. Diane continued, still in that flat tone. Sit where? For how long? Brooke swallowed and answered. In the tomato planter. About an hour. Maybe a little longer. Silence. The thick silence before a storm. Diane turned to look at Rosie, her voice softening, whispering, Rosie, does it hurt? Rosie shook her head, answering her grandmother. I'm sorry, Grandma. I was bad. I broke Aunt Brooke's things. Diane took her granddaughter's tiny hands, her voice choking up. No, you're not bad. You didn't do anything wrong. Then she stood up and turned to Brooke. Her expression completely changed. I'd never seen Diane like this in the 24 years I'd known her. She spoke, each word clear like she was reading a verdict. You're 24 years old, Brooke. You grabbed a 5-year-old so hard she had to bite you in self-defense. Then you painted her face like a clown. Then you locked her in a cold mud tub for over an hour. She paused, took a breath, her voice shaking as she tried to control herself. "And you call that teaching a lesson?" Brooke burst into tears, her voice indignant. "Mom, are you taking their side instead of mine? I'm your biological daughter." Diane looked at her daughter. Then she started saying what I never thought she would say. She talked about how she'd defended Brooke her whole life. Defended her to the point where at 24 she still hadn't worked a day. Defended her to the point where she thought she had the right to do anything without consequences. Then her voice dropped, tired but still clear. "I defended you so much that I abandoned Garrett, my husband's son, for all these years." The moment she finished speaking, I stood there stunned. This was the first time I'd heard Diane admit this. But my half-sister was completely the opposite. Brooke sobbed uncontrollably, running over to grab her mother's hand, screaming, "You don't love me anymore. You're choosing them over me." Diane shook her head, her voice dropping. "No. I love you so blindly that this blindness turned you into someone who could hurt a 5-year-old without any remorse." Brooke screamed, her voice desperate. "You're backing me into a corner. I'm your daughter." Diane pulled her hand away from her daughter's, looking straight into Brooke's eyes. "No, Brooke. I'm not backing you into anything. You did this, you deal with the consequences." Then she turned to me, her voice returning to calm. "Garrett, what Brooke did to Rosie, legally, is child abuse. You have the right to call the police, and I won't interfere." Brooke's mouth fell open, her eyes wide with terror. "Mom, you're going to let him call the police on me?" Diane answered, her voice unwavering. "This is Garrett's right. These are the consequences you have to face." When she saw her own mother refuse to help her as she'd always been helped before, Brooke collapsed to the floor, crying as she'd never cried before. For the first time in her life, she realized no one would shield her anymore. I looked down at Rosie, still curled up on the sofa, then at the bruises on her arm. I didn't need to think long. I pulled out my phone and called 911. Police arrived about 20 minutes later. They took statements, photographed Rosie's injuries, and took Brooke to the station. The following weeks were a long series of paperwork, court dates, and lawyers. In the end, Brooke was charged under California Penal Code Section 273A for child abuse, sentenced to 2 years probation, and required to attend mandatory anger management classes. Justice was served, at least on paper, but for Rosie, the absolute nightmare was about to begin. Right after the police took Brooke away, I carried Rosie to the car and drove straight to UC Davis Children's Hospital. The doctor examined her, confirmed there were no serious physical injuries, just bruises on her arm and mild hypothermia. They gave her warm milk, wrapped her in blankets, and monitored her for about 2 hours before letting us go home. But physical wounds can heal. What about the invisible ones? The first night after the incident, I let Rosie sleep in the same room as me. Around 2 in the morning, screaming tore through the night and made me bolt upright like I'd been electrocuted. Rosie was sitting straight up in bed, eyes wide open but not seeing anything. She screamed, her voice hoarse with panic. "Rosie's cold. Rosie's cold. Don't leave me, Dad. Dad." I hugged her tight, her little body shaking, cold sweat soaking through her princess pajamas. I patted her back, whispered in her ear, "I'm here. I'm here. You're safe now." But she kept screaming, kept crying, kept calling my name even though I was holding her. It took almost 40 minutes for her to realize she was on a warm bed, not in a cold mud tub. The days after that, Rosie changed completely. She was no longer mischievous, no longer running around, no longer chattering and asking me hundreds of questions every day like before. She became silent, frighteningly silent. Rosie jumped at every sound. The sound of a door slamming made her shrink back. The sound of water running in the sink made her cover her ears. Someone raising their voice just a little bit, and she'd run and hide. And she was afraid of being alone, even for 5 minutes. Even when going to the bathroom, she'd call for me to stand outside the door, her voice trembling as she called out, "Are you still there, Dad? Don't go, okay, Dad?" But the detail that made my heart feel like someone was squeezing it happened one morning. Rosie was sitting, eating cereal, when she accidentally knocked over her glass of milk. White milk spread across the table, dripping onto the floor. Normal for any 5-year-old. But Rosie wasn't normal anymore. She froze. Her face went pale. Her hands started shaking. Then she opened her mouth, and what I heard made me want to fall to my knees. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry," over and over, like a machine. 10 minutes. Wouldn't stop. I knelt in front of her, gently holding her tiny, shaking shoulders. "Rosie, look at me. It's just spilled milk. I'm not angry. Promise." Rosie looked up at me, her eyes full of doubt and fear, her voice barely a whisper. "Dad, you won't put me in the cold place, right?" I pulled her close, my throat tight, unable to say a word. Diane was just as heartbroken. During the day, she took time off work to stay home and help me watch Rosie. She held her granddaughter, stroked her hair, her voice repeating over and over, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I was so focused on those sale items that I left you alone at home with Aunt Brooke. I didn't think, oh God, my poor granddaughter." Rosie didn't understand why Grandma was crying. She just patted her back and said, "Don't cry, Grandma. Rosie doesn't hurt anymore." That made Diane cry even harder. And at night, I often saw her standing at Brooke's bedroom door, looking into the empty room, eyes red. Maybe she was wondering where she went wrong. Perhaps she was missing her daughter. Maybe she was wrestling between love for her biological child and guilt over her granddaughter. I didn't ask, and she didn't say. But I knew I couldn't heal my daughter myself. The following week, I took Rosie to see a child psychologist. And there, in that room full of toys and colorful drawings, I realized a painful truth. I was also at fault in all of this. After the 5th therapy session, with significant progress, Dr. Porter called me in for a private conversation. She looked at me, her voice gentle but each word hitting like a hammer. "Mr. Garrett, Rosie isn't just traumatized from that incident." I frowned, not understanding what she meant. She continued, "She shows signs of a child who lacked secure attachment even before this happened. She's been carrying feelings of not being good enough, fear of abandonment, for a very long time." I wanted to argue, wanted to say she was wrong. I love my daughter. I do everything for her. But then I fell silent, because I knew she was right. During those years in San Francisco, I worked about 70 hours a week to climb up the corporate ladder. Rosie was with babysitters more than with her parents. I thought money would give her a good life. Good schools, expensive toys, luxury vacations. But what she needed wasn't an iPad or Barbie dolls. What she needed was her dad's presence. Where was I when she was learning to walk? At the office. When did she say her first word? In a meeting. When she was scared of the dark and cried for Dad. On a business trip flight. Dr. Porter told me, her voice calm, "Your daughter doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you there, present, listening. That's the most precious gift. And it's completely free." The incident with Brooke was just the last straw. Rosie had been carrying wounds all along. I couldn't see them. Brooke was cruel, but I was neglectful. I don't know which is worse. From that day on, I changed. I cut back on freelance projects and accepted less money. Every morning, I took Rosie to school, and every afternoon, I picked her up. Every night, I read her stories before bed, something I never thought I'd have time for. Diane also played a big part. Every weekend, she taught Rosie how to make cookies. Grandmother and granddaughter covered in flour, giggling in the kitchen. Small but precious moments. As for Brooke, after the trial, things weren't as easy for her as I thought they would be. Diane told me that when she called her daughter and told her about Rosie's condition, Brooke cried. I wondered what she was crying about. For her niece? From regret? Or for herself? But in the weeks after that, Brooke kept calling me. First, I wouldn't answer. Then she started texting. Long messages, telling me what was happening to her. She told me about the rehabilitation center, where she had to attend mandatory anger management programs. She told me about group therapy sessions, where she had to face herself and what she had done. She told me about sleepless nights, when her conscience wouldn't let her rest. But what really shocked me was what happened during her time in jail awaiting trial. In jail, there's an unspoken rule. People who commit crimes against children are despised most by other inmates. When her cellmates found out Brooke was charged with child abuse, they gave her a taste of it. I don't know exactly what they did. Brooke didn't say. She just texted that she learned her lesson the most painful way possible. Reading those messages, I didn't know how I felt. Satisfied? Not really. I'm sorry for her, right? Not exactly either. Something in between, like justice coming from where I least expected it. Turns out, sometimes life doesn't need family to teach lessons. Let consequences teach. Let reality teach. Let the wounds you inflict on yourself teach you lessons no one else can teach. 6 months passed. Rosie started smiling again. Not much, but some. The nightmares gradually decreased. She started playing with friends at school and started asking me silly questions like before. I learned one thing. You can't buy back lost time with your child. I just wanted to let you know that you can start from today. Then one evening, after finishing reading Cinderella, Rosie curled up next to me, eyes already drooping. Suddenly, she whispered, "Dad, can Rosie forgive Aunt Brooke?" That question stunned me. I asked back, "Why do you want to forgive her?" Rosie thought for a moment, then answered, "Dr. Porter said holding anger is like hugging a heavy rock. Rosie hugs it every day. It makes Rosie really tired." She paused, then continued, "Rosie wants to put the rock down. Don't throw it away. Just put it down." I hugged her close and said gently, "Forgiving doesn't mean you have to play with Aunt Brooke." Rosie nodded. "I know." I continued, "Forgiving also doesn't mean you have to forget what happened." She looked at me, her eyes strangely serious, saying, "I won't forget. I'll be careful." I asked again, "So why do you want to forgive?" Rosie thought for a moment, then answered, "So I won't feel bad anymore. Not to make Aunt Brooke feel better." Then she added, her voice tiny, "Once I saw Grandma talking to Aunt on the phone. Grandma was crying. Aunt was crying too. Grandma was mad at Aunt even though she's not here anymore. She looked down, whispering, 'Every time you're mad at me, I'm sad. Every time I'm sad, and you go away, I get even sadder. I bet Aunt Brooke is sad like that too.'" Before I could say anything, Rosie continued, "If I forgive her, then Grandma will let her come back. As long as I don't touch her stuff anymore, then she won't be mad at me." My heart tightened. A 6-year-old still thought it was her fault. Before I could respond, I heard sniffling behind us. Diane was standing at the half-open door, hand covering her mouth, tears streaming down. She had heard everything. She walked in, knelt by the bed, hugged her granddaughter, and whispered, "It's not your fault. Listen to me, it's never your fault." She was only 6 years old, and she understood something many adults never comprehend in their whole lives. I felt both proud and heartbroken. No child should have to learn this lesson at this age. As for me, Brooke did send an apology letter. I read it, folded it, and put it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to forgive. Maybe I never will be, but that's okay too. Forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation. The following week, Rosie showed me a picture she drew. A house, with Dad, with Grandma Diane, even with Aunt Brooke. But Aunt Brooke was standing a little farther away, near the door, like she was about to step in but still waiting to be invited. She explained, "I drew Aunt Brooke there, but she has to stand far away, because I need time." I hung the picture on the refrigerator, and I thought, this little girl has taught me more than my 32 years of living. Just like that, 2 years have passed since that day. And once again, everything changed, in a way I never expected. 2 years after that fateful day, Diane called me out to the back porch to talk. She was holding a stack of papers and a key. I knew something big was happening. She looked at me, her voice calm but her eyes full of emotion. "I've decided to move in with Brooke. She needs me by her side to really change." Then she placed the papers in my hands. "I've transferred the house to your name. Use it to start over." I was stunned. This house was worth over $500,000. I stammered, "Diane, I can't accept." She interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. "Your father left too quickly, didn't have time to leave anything behind. But I know what he wanted. He wanted you and Rosie to have a home." She took my hand, eyes welling up. "I'll visit often. I'm still Rosie's grandma. Always will be." 3 months after Diane left, I started renovating the house. In her room, I painted a warm cream color, put on new sheets, and placed fresh flowers on the nightstand so she'd have a place to rest when she visits. I changed the flowers every week. As for Brooke's room, I hesitated for a long time. Finally, I decided to repaint it the pastel pink she liked, put up new curtains, and placed a complete set of cosmetics on the vanity table. Seeing this, Rosie asked, "Dad, why did you buy makeup for Aunt Brooke?" I answered, "Because this is still her home. She can come back anytime. And that steel tub in the yard, once my daughter's nightmare, is now full of tulips. Rosie and Diane planted them before she left." Just like that, life goes on. I found a new job. Rosie is growing up, her wounds slowly healing. People usually leave the house they grew up in with pain and resentment. But I came back to it with something else. Maybe a piece I'd never had before. Every weekend, after school, Rosie still often climbs onto Brooke's bed and sits, looking at the pile of cosmetics that haven't been opened yet. She seems, but doesn't touch other people's things anymore. Since that day, she learned that some things need waiting for, some doors need an invitation before you enter. As for me, I don't know what I'm waiting for. A meeting? A hug? Or another apology? But I know one thing, my heart has healed. And so has Rosie's. That's the end of my story. If there are lessons I want to share with you through the story, maybe 3 things. First, if your child suddenly changes, becomes silent, jumpy, or shows unusual behavior, find out why. An unusually well-behaved child may not be a good child, but a scared one. Second, don't wait until you lose something to realize what's important. Your child doesn't need you to be perfect. They need you to be there. Being present and listening, that's the most precious gift. Third, forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation. You have the right to forgive and still keep distance. Sometimes, setting boundaries is the only way to protect yourself and those you love. Before ending, I want to ask, if you were me, would you choose to forgive or wait? Please let me know what you think in the comments. If the story touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to support us. Thanks for listening. I look forward to seeing you again.